So another year has gone by. That's it. 2019 is behind us. We are in a new decade. We are in 2020. Personally, one of my most anticipated films. Personally, one of my most anticipated years for film ever. I tweeted recently the list of directors and writers we're getting a new movie from, and I even missed some. There's a potential Spike Lee film coming this year. There's a Wes Anderson film coming this year. It's going to be a fucking crazy year for movies. But for now, we get to recap on 2019, and I have done a top 10 films of the year list since 2015, when I sounded like this.
It is the end of the year.
Obviously, lots has changed since then. I've learned a lot more about film. I've seen a lot more movies in theaters. I wound up seeing 94 movies in theaters this year. I was 7 short of last year. I hit 101 last year. Really was trying to hit the 100 mark. It just couldn't be done. I fell a little bit behind towards the end, so we missed the mark by a little bit, but you know, I really do try and see as much as I possibly can to make this list as fair as possible. I think the only 2 movies that really could have made it on this list that I missed out on because I didn't get a release here or in Boston in time would be Portrait of a Lady on Fire or 1917. I don't think I'm going to be able to see Portrait of a Lady on Fire probably until February. It's going to be like Cold War last year. And 1917 I get next week, so at least I'll be able to see that and maybe make a review on it and be able to talk about it. But the only thing I really want to address before I get into this list, what's really kind of given me some fire in the last couple of years, is these are my top 10 favorite movies of the year. The movies that I look back on and give me goosebumps or chills, and certain elements stick out to me and I found a personal connection with. These aren't necessarily what I find to be the 10 best movies of the year. In 2017, I had a big stint with Call Me By Your Name not being on my list. A movie I would probably put in my top 10 best movies of that year, but not something that I found to be one of my favorite movies of the year, not one that I'm going back to rewatch relatively consistently. These are the movies that I think stuck with me the most, and I would, most recommend to someone in terms of enjoyment and in terms of just what I find to be great filmmaking. So I often find that I talk a little bit too much about my honorable mentions, so I'm just kind of going to throw them up right here. These are the movies that just barely missed the cut. It was really difficult cutting this list together and switching around like 9 and 10 a lot and trying to figure out what to swap in there and what to swap out. But these are the ones that just barely missed out, but still great films, most being an 8 out of 10. I think they're all 8 out of 10s, actually, that I would absolutely recommend to anyone, and I think is definitely worth looking out for. Starting out at number 10 is a good foreign film. We've got Pain and Glory, which I saw by myself, actually. It was like a Monday night, and no one else really wanted to go see it, and I had been looking forward to it for a while, and I can see why this film has been so critically acclaimed and why Antonio Banderas picked up Best Actor at Cannes. It's a truly heartfelt story that takes a little bit to get into, but once it captures you, it really doesn't let you go. It takes a hold of you, and it takes you on this emotional journey. It's a character study, in a sense. You're brought into the psyche of a man where just kind of everything and anything has gone wrong to, you're kind of run through his list of physical ailments. Alongside his emotional ailments, you're kind of met with a man who is at rock bottom in regards to both of those things, and you get to explore how he's been led to these elements and, how the events of the film either help him deal with that or affect him negatively in that regard. And I think having the central performance that you have out of Antonio Banderas and the supporting cast like Penelope Cruz is really pertinent to the film's success. Everyone is really excellent. It's an incredibly subtle film, but one that touches on things that I don't think enough films touch on. A particular standout to me was Antonio Banderas talking to the actor he's working with after giving him his story and saying, it's not just about crying as an actor, it's about knowing when not to cry, and then they portray this whole scene, and he's constantly on the verge of tears but never cries. It's little things like that thematically that I think they touch on that other movies sort of miss, and I think there was a clear vision for what this film wanted to say and what this film wanted to do. And once you latch onto those emotions, the movie, like I said, doesn't let you release those up until the final frame, which I kind of think is perfect. I think that final scene is the perfect wrap-up and arguably makes the film that much better. Pain and Glory is absolutely one I'd recommend. In a year where Parasite wasn't nominated for Best Foreign Film, you would have yourself an easy Best Foreign Film winner, but alas, Parasite did come out. At number 9, I have The Two Popes, which I was lucky enough to see in theaters. I got to see all the Netflix big releases, like Oscar releases in theaters. I saw this one by myself, too. Man, maybe there's maybe there's a sign I'm not grabbing. It's a film that you wouldn't expect to be unique or stylistic, but it has a director that allows for those kinds of elements. He is a very stylish director, having worked on, like City of God and some of the most respected films of that nature. And I think a lot of people might be turned off by those elements, those technical elements in particular, like the cinematography and the editing, which are, very almost distracting, but I found to be fascinating and I thought added to the experience of the film. I'm a sucker for stylish elements of cinematography and editing when it's done correctly and when it's done consistently and is used to enhance the story and its themes, and I thought that this movie did that perfectly. I think technically this film is a masterpiece, from the editing to the score to the cinematography to the production design to the costume design. I thought every element of that was fucking flawless. You have excellent direction behind the film, and you have two really, really strong lead performances, and you have a great film. Like, the movie's called The Two Popes, and you don't have a film centering around two primary characters. You don't have a successful film with that in mind, without two performances that are not only great in their own respects, but play off of each other and manage to form this dynamic with one another, whether that dynamic be like the opposite end of a magnet and they're pushing each other away, or the end of the magnet that brings the two of them together. And I think that they managed to portray each half of that brilliantly, and I think that their arc as characters and as a relationship of characters develops quite beautifully. It's a really moving film. The performances themselves are really moving, and they evoke true feelings out of you. The backstory is, it's slightly expository, but it's necessary, and when it's done, it's still captivating, and it doesn't take you out of the movie. It merely adds to the characters. And I think that's kind of its strongest suit, is portraying these two characters and how they start as being these two separate entities but wind up finding this middle ground, and you really feel that this friendship and relationship and bond comes together in a natural fashion. And I found this one to be a really excellent and fascinating kind of watch that I think anyone, not only if you don't even know shit about the story, I think it's just a great narrative to watch and to see a relationship come together. Number 8, you kind of move away from the Oscar baity type of films. You get Knives Out, which I got to see with my girlfriend, and we absolutely loved it. I have been a Rian Johnson fan for a while. The Last Jedi is, a whole other fucking case. But I really love Looper, and I loved his work on Breaking Bad and Brick. I haven't seen Brothers Bloom, but I've heard it's great. And he is a very unique director. He has very clear vision for what he wants to make. And murder mysteries kind of fall into this pattern of just 2 hours of building to a twist, and, that's just sort of what you're looking for, and this movie takes a much different approach to the twist element. It's almost difficult to describe the structure that this movie adapts to and adheres to, but it manages to do it in a way of something I've really never seen before. It feels like a 1950s thriller but that takes place in 2019, and I thought that part of it was really, really cool. It's difficult to nail that, and that comes with the script and the direction, and that's just the tone and the layout, and then you actually get into the story, which is extremely meticulous and well thought out, and every twist and turn does kind of come out of nowhere, but it's earned. It's not a moronic twist, one that's just there to be a twist. Which are the best kinds of film twists, are the ones that feel earned and feel built to and feel rewarding, and that's the kind of shit that you like. And you've got a film driven by a brilliant cast all across the board. It's a movie that by design should be muddled, and you should be confused as to who is who, and you're not, because those beginning elements of character setup are done so well. And yes, again, like I said with The Last Choice, it's expository, but it's edited in such a fashion where it still manages to be captivating. I thought every element of this film kind of came together. It's no perfect movie, but it is an absolutely entertaining ride. It's thrilling, it's funny, and there's a little bit of something for everyone in it, and I think anyone can absolutely enjoy this movie if you go in with just the mentality of, yeah, it's a murder mystery, but it does something a little extra and a little something more for the film buffs at home who want a little extra spice in their movies. Number 7, I think this is the earliest movie on the list that I saw, if I'm not mistaken. I have Climax, which I believe I saw back in March. It's the newest Gaspar Noé film. And I saw this with a poor friend of mine who is not a film guy at all. It was Drake. I don't know how many of you have watched the Oscars reaction from last year, but he's in the first half of it. And I have now dragged him to Suspiria, and I've dragged him to this. And it's so difficult to put into words how to feel about this movie. But it's just a fucking roller coaster. It is a thrill ride and a half, and you've probably never seen anything like it. It is an absolute achievement in direction. It's a masterclass, I think, in that area. I think sometimes it gets a little bit up its own ass, and I think, especially towards the beginning, with certain editing choices, but I'm willing to forgive all of that. I think it masters the tone. It makes you absolutely sick to your stomach like no other film can, and that's ultimately the point. I wish I had more to say about this. Technically, it's an achievement. The performances are all great. It's not a story-driven film necessarily. The story is a bunch of dancers get drugged and everything goes to shit. And watching everything goes to shit, the word entertaining seems wrong. But in a sense it is. I mean, you're just in absolute fucking awe of the things that are happening in this film. And that's the goal, is to just present to you this absolute clusterfuck of things, and they're all so brilliantly choreographed and coordinated. It is difficult to deny the mastery of this movie. I know people can be kind of one or the other on Gaspar Noé. I'm relatively indifferent. I think he can do great, and I think he can do less than great, and I think this falls towards the excellent side of the work he has done. I challenge you to watch this film and not have it linger in your mind, not only for days, but for me, since March. Number 6, I'm throwing Marriage Story in there, a movie I got to see at a small film festival really early in Boston. And, early on, I think I would have put it higher, but I don't think it's managed to stick with me as much in the way that I would have wanted it to before, throwing it really high on the list. But it's absolutely still one of the best films of the year, and I know on Twitter it's become this controversy because of the scene going around, which I think is absurd because A, I think a lot of people who are talking about that scene on Twitter have not seen the whole movie, and B, if they haven't seen the whole movie, don't realize that's not even the whole fucking scene. There is a whole other chunk before that, which winds up leading and building to that moment, and people are comparing it to the scene in Revolutionary Road, which is like whatever, people can do whatever they want, but I think cumulatively, as a film as a whole, I think this is an excellent, excellent movie. It's a simple film, in a sense. It doesn't do anything visually crazy or stylistically nuts. Baumbach is a stylistic filmmaker, but it's not as overt as a lot of directors would have made this movie, but that's the point, is it is a simple story. It's just about a divorcing couple and the struggles that come with that, and it's about the nuances of a relationship and the little things that play a much larger role than you would expect. These little moments, these little aspects and areas of life and love and the tear between that can occur. And I think all of those things are conveyed so well and with such emotion, because that's, I think, the movie's strongest suit, is the emotion that it manages to evoke out of you in kind of every turn. And you've got excellent performances all across the board. Adam Driver is definitely the standout. I know it's sort of being propelled as Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson's film, and it's really not. He's the lead, and she's great, but I think he really shines amongst all else. Laura Dern is fantastic in this film. She's growing to be one of my favorite actresses. Alan Alda's great. Fucking Ray Liotta comes out of nowhere and has a phenomenal performance. I think everything about this movie really falls into place. I think there are just like one or two tonal inconsistencies that come across, but I think anyone who's, seen things out of context and it's turned them off from this film need to rethink that. I think it's from start to finish, it conveys something that may seem basic, but has a purpose for it and really does want to tell a story and make you connect with characters and try to figure out who you want to be rooting for, or whether you want to be rooting for anyone, what you want the outcome to be, and whether that outcome satisfies you or dissatisfies you ultimately comes down to the viewer and their perception. Number 5, I'm going with a very recent watch. I'm going with Little Women, which is kind of surprising to me, actually, as A, I did not love the trailers, and B, I'm not as big of a fan of Lady Bird as everyone else is. I think it's pretty decent. I think it's above average and good, but not amazing. And I think this film far, far surpasses Lady Bird as a quality film. It reminds me a lot of how Damien Chazelle started his career, where Whiplash showcased his talents as a writer, and then La La Land showcased his talents as a director. And I think Lady Bird showcased Gerwig's talents as a writer, and this movie showcased her talents a lot more as a director. She's a very subtle director. I think, like Baumbach, actually, in Marriage Story, I think they're similar in the area that they work a lot with their actors a lot more. They're a lot more focused on, making sure that who is playing who understands their characters and is positive to make sure that they understand why those characters are doing what they're doing and making the choices they're making, and why they feel certain ways about what characters at what time, and all of that stuff, you can tell, is extremely well thought out in the screenplay as well. But I think a lot of it came from Gerwig's one-on-one interactions with Saoirse Ronan and Emma Watson and Florence Pugh and Eliza Scanlon and the whole other slew of names that you can throw in this cast. I think it's an excellent film. As a period piece, it manages to be extremely captivating. There's always going to be that problem that people are going to have, where period pieces are inherently boring to some people. People find the idea of a film set in the Civil War to be a disinteresting one. So you have to set out to find a way to make your movie captivating. And though it's not over the top and stylistic in that sense, it's a powerful story that's conveyed in a powerful manner and a personal manner and an up-close manner. You get really close to all of these characters, and that's in part, of course, due to the performances, which are all fantastic. The only flaw I can find is poor Emma Watson can't do a fucking American accent to save her life. Every sentence is British, and it's really unfortunate, and it's really, because her performance is really good, it just keeps fucking slipping out. It's like Nicole Kidman in Big Little Lies, who has a phenomenal performance, but you just continue to hear Australian. But, aside from all that, when Gerwig wants to experiment with the camera and do something meaningful with the camera, it works, and it makes those scenes shine amongst all of the others. It's an extremely powerful film that really comes together in all of its elements, and I would highly recommend this one. At number 4, I probably have the film that's divided most people in terms of reception. I have Jojo Rabbit. Despite winning the TIFF People's Choice Awards, the critics kind of seem to dislike this film. It's very in the middle in terms of its reviews, so I kind of went in with a fresh mind as someone who liked the way the movie looked, but could kind of see where it would go wrong. And I fucking loved this movie, man. I really, really loved it. Emotionally, I think it hit me the hardest out of any film that I've seen. I'm by no means an emotional person. I don't cry when I see movies, but I can feel the sadness, and it's really difficult to get that out of me, and fuck, man, this movie really got it. This movie really nailed that. Taika Waititi has proven himself to really be a powerhouse of a director. This is, more of the stylish, unique type of film, and I think what I love so much about it is it captures the innocence and, in a sense, ignorance, unintentional ignorance of this nationalistic child who has just been born and kind of bred into this fucked up world, but was just on the wrong side of it. It's a really interesting glimpse into the innocence of childhood and how easily you can be bred to something that later you can discover to just blow your mind that you even followed that. I think that area of development is so flawlessly done in this film, and you're brought into the mind of a child. I mean, that's the way Hitler is conveyed in this movie, is like just the way a 10-year-old would think Adolf Hitler is, and that's why some of the jokes are cheesy and over the top, because that's what a 10-year-old would think up. But all of the other humor and all of the other dialogue from the actual people in his life isn't cheesy or over the top. It's real and it's grounded, and the differentiation between those two areas, I think, is so fascinating and is so well done in this movie tonally. You have a friendship that comes together in a really interesting manner and an oftentimes hysterical manner, but when it wants to hit home, it does. Waititi does so much stuff with the camera and editing that, just manages to fucking gut punch you. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about in certain areas. The characters are likable, even the ones that you're probably not supposed to like, and you kind of hate yourself for liking. They manage to make everyone kind of charming in this film. Everything about it is charming. I think it's a lovely movie, and it's funny, and it's heartbreaking, and it touches on themes that you wouldn't expect a movie like this to touch on. It goes in directions that you don't think it will. The climax is insane, and it's high scale, and it's high intensity, and all of the performances are brilliant. Thomasin McKenzie and Roman Griffith Davies are excellent. Sam Rockwell is excellent. Scarlett Johansson is excellent. The only thing I could ask for is to fucking cut Rebel Wilson out of this movie, who just continues to be awful. I cannot think of his name, but the one who plays Sam Rockwell's gay lover from Game of Thrones, Alfie Allen, their whole dynamic is so funny. Everything about this movie I found to be really, really quite amazing, and maybe I'm just a sucker for it for some reason, but I really like this movie, and I hope that people who continue to see it will like it more and more. At number 3, I have The Irishman, which I think I'm going to talk about the least just because I did a whole video on it, and I've kind of said everything I want to say, and if you want to hear more about what I think of The Irishman, you can kind of go back and watch that. But I got to rewatch a little bit of it. My mom was watching it, and I kind of sat down and I watched the first 30 minutes of it, and the first 30 minutes were even better than I remembered them being, actually, and I kind of realized I was incorrect in saying the first hour was a bit of a slog, because those 30 minutes honestly went by like nothing. When my mom paused it, I expected it to be 15 minutes in. I think you've got Scorsese doing what Scorsese does best, which is capturing the essence of the mob world, but also tonally, balancing between sort of the comedic elements of that and the more funny areas where he can be more stylish, and you then more have the grounded and gritty areas of the movie, and balancing between those two. Like that shit goes away in the third act, and it feels like someone has just pumped the fucking brakes and slammed into a brick wall. I mean, you feel yourself jolt to a stop, and everything just hits. And it's difficult for a filmmaker to do that. I think the third act of this movie is genuinely brilliant, and the first two are even more brilliant because they lead into that third one so brilliantly. All of the performances are A grade. Steve Zalian's script is amazing. It's even better on a second watch. You notice so much more in terms of what he's layered into his dialogue and into his writing, and I think he is a truly brilliant writer. He can miss sometimes, but when he hits, he really hits. The production element of this film is great. The production value is superb. I think everything really works with this film, and it's one I definitely recommend seeing. Number 2, I have a super weird pick. A pick that probably many of you haven't seen, and I'm going to just take this moment to recommend it, and I'm not going to say much about it because I don't want to say much about it because I want people to see it, and you should go in blind because I went in blind and I had one of the best experiences watching this movie I had all year. It was The Art of Self-Defense. It's the best Yorgos Lanthimos or Coen Brothers movie you're going to get this year because none of them made movies, and instead Riley Stern made this film, and it is fucking brilliant. It is hysterical. It is dark. It is thrilling. It's everything that you want a movie like this to be. It's the best. Well, no, it's not the best dark comedy that came out this year, but it's fucking close. It's a great black comedy with great performances. Scenes that have stuck in my mind since the summer, and I've been meaning to rewatch this, as much as I can. I love those kinds of movies. I love Coen Brother movies, and I love Yorgos Lanthimos' filmography. So this is kind of just right up my alley. I think this is like exactly the kind of film that I wanted it to be. It's the very deadpan kind of comedy. It's intelligent comedy, but it's also genuinely really disturbing in certain elements, and it's works to be a thriller in certain respects, and it doesn't hold back, which I love. It's really not, it really doesn't give a shit in terms of tailoring to your expectations. There's a vision, and it's going to be that movie, and it is that movie, and it fucking works. The only thing I remember not loving was certain parts of the editing, but there were also certain parts of the editing that were phenomenal. For being a feature film debut and a low-budget film, the technical elements are spectacular. The practical effects in particular stick in my mind. There are like effects that I remember and like haunt me even. I don't want to say much about this movie. I just think you should see it. Just go see it. Just get out. Go fuck off and go see it. Number 1 is an obvious answer, but I think it's the answer. It's Parasite. I'm going to do a best movies of the decade list next week, and what I'm going to do is take my favorite movies of the year from each year and just talk a little bit about them. And I've changed a few of those picks from the last couple of years, and Parasite is just that movie that I don't think is going to change from this year. I think this movie is just absolutely brilliant. It's like the only hard 10 out of 10 I gave this year. It was easily the best theater experience I ever had this year. That is, I mean, the movies that I love the most are the ones that just make me forget I'm in a movie theater. And every now and then I'll blink and realize where I am for a second, and then right back in. It's a fucking thrill ride, and another one you should go into blind and just know nothing about. I mean, it continues to turn and turn and turn and go in every direction you don't expect it to go, and every new direction is just as captivating as the last, and it continues to build and build and build, and you're fucking reading the entire time you're watching it, and it's awesome. Bong Joon-ho has done something. He continues to just outdo himself every new film that he makes, and this thing is no different. It's like the highest narrative film rating on Letterboxd there is right now. You can't avoid it. It's getting serious talk for Best Picture. The direction is brilliant. The writing is brilliant. The performances are brilliant. The production design is unbelievable. The editing is spectacular. The score is hauntingly beautiful. Everything about this movie is perfect. This is a perfect film. And I know it's an obvious choice, and it kind of sucks that it's an obvious choice. but it's the choice. There was no movie in terms of an experience that I had this year that even fucking comes close to this one. I can't tell you to get out to see this movie enough. Not only is it your runaway for Best Foreign Film at the Oscars, but you've got a genuine contender for Best Picture if this thing continues to receive the accolades it has been. And that's it. That's 2019 for you. We are in 2020. There is tons to look forward to. In terms of what to look forward to, that's coming in the coming couple of weeks. I'm sorry if I'm a little off, by the way. It's actually 2 o'clock in the morning. This Sunday, come join me for the live Golden Globes reaction. There will be a very special guest who has kind of willingly agreed to be on camera. My girlfriend will be watching with me. She's seen a couple of the movies. I've taken her to a couple of the movies, and she wants to watch, so she's going to be with me. I'm going to release a Best Films of the Decade video next week as well, and then Monday the 13th, I will also be doing a live stream for the Oscar nominations and reacting to those, and that VOD will go up immediately following the ceremony. So, lots to look forward to, still tons to come. Let me know what you guys thought of my picks down below. I want to hear what your top 10 would be. I do read through your comments, and I look at all of them. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.